Bullet hello, Shmupcast. I'm your host, Sensei Pong, and yes, we're just we're gonna act like there was no like indefinite amount of time between this episode and the last episode, because it gives me personally the feeling and illusion that this podcast episode is evergreen in any sort of way, but whatever. Though, in that time, I've actually given quite a bit of thought about how to actually structure this and what other kind of things I could do with the podcast, or even actually maybe even possibly start up a new podcast, because I've actually finally been able to cram down on my schedule. So I want to actually apologize before anything else. Holy balls, the summer was busy. So many freaking things came up. If it wasn't one thing, it was another. Personal matters, work stuff, whatever. Just things piled up, and I got mildly overwhelmed. But I'm all right. I'm all cool. I'm good. It's all good. Yeah. Fortunately for me, though, and fortunately for you, there honestly hasn't really been much shmup news or notable things to really, give ya or like whatever. But I do have some neat stuff that you might want to check out in terms of new shmup games or recent releases that you may be interested in. So, yeah, check that out once we get to that point in this episode. But in terms of format, we're going to cover the news, and we're going to cover a little bit of what I've been playing, with some little personal like insight, a little bit of review, a little bit of first impressions depending on the game, and just tell y'all what I've been shmupping and maybe some other stuff I've been playing on the side. So, stay tuned for that. This is actually a pretty full episode, so buckle up and go for the core. I don't have a catchphrase just yet. Leave a comment down below if you have a good catch. Whatever. Newsflash! Alright, so I had reported about this on my very first episode. It's about time for an update. So, I had talked about this in the Shmup Creator by Bulo Software. From what it seems like, from what his personal notes in terms of like letting followers know what's going on, it looks like he is making some pretty good progress, and he is concentrating more on the UI and just the accessibility, like the ease of use type of thing, in terms of how easy it is to use the software for somebody that wouldn't necessarily have that much programming knowledge or experience, somebody like me, which is pretty cool, and I'm excited to actually see how this project ends up turning out. Quick explanation if you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe reference to the first episode of the Shmupcast, but the Shmup Creator is basically just an easy-to-use game engine specifically designed for making shmups, both horizontal, vertical, etc., whatever. I think it's mostly just 2D stuff. I've never seen him actually talk about any kind of like 3D rail shooter type deals, but whatever. That's still pretty cool, and honestly, I like my 2D shmups, so it's all good. Now, one interesting point he did mention was that he is actually implementing like a whole tutorial system, which is probably going to take him some extra time in terms of like development, so which may actually push the release date maybe a little bit further down the line than he hoped, but I believe it was actually good foresight on my part to like kind of keep up with how this guy's doing and all that. Now, unfortunately, here's the bad news. He did say he was actually going to do an update by the end of August. That update hasn't arrived, and he was saying that he wanted to make some sort of like demo game to give an example, but I'm not sure what the progress is on that. And hopefully he comes out with another update sooner than later. I'm hoping, and from what it seems like, he might have an update by the end of September. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. I'll leave a link down below so you can see all his, progress notes and dev notes and whatever. So, moving on. Now another update I have here is the developer Caves project, aka the newer game which was nicknamed Project 3 Jus. That's the number 3 and then JUS. Man, I am terrible at research sometimes, and apparently the name was already announced last year. It's Sangoku Justice, or Sangoku Justice is really the proper way of pronouncing that. That's spelled Sangoku Justice. And Well, it's what I was a little worried about. It just seems to be, a free-to-play model of a moderately fine and functional arena shooter with a lot of free-to-play elements in it. And honestly, that doesn't necessarily interest me in any way. Because really, when we're talking about arena shooters and arena shmups, really, if you want to call those shmups or whatever, I do because I keep my definition pretty broad. There's more than enough twin-stick shooters out there for me to just consume at a constant. Just look on Steam, type in twin-stick shooter, you're going to come up with like 100. And at least 50 of those are pretty excellent. So, I'm not really thirsting for that kind of gameplay. And honestly, if I'm looking for something that's like isometric or 3D and has like action elements to it, I might even just play Diablo, whatever. So, yeah, I'm not even bothering with it at this point. I believe it's only available on iPhones, so even then I'm not even in the market for that. It might be available on Android. I have an Android phone, but I suppose if you have an iPhone or whatever, maybe go check that out if you're curious, like morbidly curious. But yeah, mildly disappointing. Now moving on though to some other happier news, not entirely shmup related. This summer, Stunfest and E3 happened. Those are things that happened, which in general are just gaming things. Stunfest, if you don't know, is mostly like a fighting games tournament which is held in France. I don't remember the name of the city that it's held in, but Stunfest is pretty easy to look for. Just type in STUNFEST, Stunfest, one word. And if you're into gaming and you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you're pretty on the up and up on what gaming conventions are there, so you probably know what E3 is. If you don't, E3 is like this big, giant gaming conference, business conference that happens every year where all the major companies put out a whole bunch of releases and stuff, and Nintendo does its own thing. And it's like, hey guys, whatever, we got games and stuff. So, it's cool. Now, in terms of shmup-related things, there wasn't really much to talk about in terms for E3. Stunfest apparently has been doing more shmup demonstrations, like 1cc runs and whatever, for people to watch, and which is cool. I'm down with that. Spread the love. With back on topic with E3, I suppose the only thing that I've noted here that's really kind of shmup related would be StarLink. Now, if you don't know what StarLink be, I can't talk. Well, if you're not familiar with what StarLink is Ubisoft's new game. I don't remember if there's an actual release date just yet. Let me check that out. I should have this noted. Why don't I have this noted? Man, I'm terrible at my job. What's the release date? Oh, October 16th, 2018. There we go. Should have known that. Should have noted that. Anyways, StarLink is Ubisoft's new toy-to-life game, which will be available on all the major consoles, which includes Xbox One, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. So, yeah, when I said toys to life, maybe you just shut off your brain for a second, but hear me out. That doesn't interest me in the slightest either, the whole toys to life aspect of it. But what is interesting is that in terms of the Nintendo Switch version, there's a full-out Star Fox campaign. And from what I've heard, and from what people have said in terms of playing demos and playing at other conventions, which includes Gamescom, PAX, and E3, people are saying that it feels like a good Star Fox game, the kind of game that we've been waiting for a very long time, if you're a long-time Star Fox fan. Now, I'm not exactly sure what this whole game entails. Maybe it's a whole lot of all-range mode. I'm kind of hoping for a lot of rail shooters, similar to classic Star Fox on Star Fox 64 and Star Fox on the SNES. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for. But all range mode stuff is pretty cool, being OG Wing Commander nut that I am, and that's fine. It sounds cool. I've looked at a little bit of gameplay. It looks good, but who knows? That's really the only big shmup news that came out of E3, and even then, it's not really a shmup. It's more of a flight sim, so I apologize. if you are curious about E3 and just my thoughts, a few of the games have already come out that I was actually mildly interested in, pretty interested in, and they're not shmup related. The big one, obviously, being the strategy guy that I am, Fire Emblem Three Houses will be releasing next year in 2019, the early part of 2019. That's an SRPG, if you didn't know. A lot of fun stuff. Kind of more, I would say, more on like the hardcore sphere of SRPGs, because it does have a lot of permadeath. Usually, at least that's what the classic Fire Emblem stuff had. You could play casually, and when your character dies, they're not gone forever, and that doesn't change the storyline, whatever. It's fine. I don't know. I'm curious. I want to see where this goes. In the meantime, I have been playing Disgaea, and keeping on topic with the SRPGs real fast, the one Switch game that I am just like super hyped for is Disgaea 1 Complete Edition is coming out soon. I forget exactly when the release date is, but I want to say it's in October. So, oh boy. Time sinks, baby. Time sinks. The other things that looked pretty interesting was Killer Queen Black is coming out on the Nintendo Switch, and I'm familiar with Killer Queen as, just, it's not something I've actually ever played, but it's an indie arcade game which has, been around the arcade scene as of recent. And from what I heard, it's really good. It's got like up to 8 players or like 10 players or something like that, where people kind of have like this, like you play in like teams and you have to go against each other competitively in like this kind of like chaotic fight where like you have to like gather honey or let the snail win this race, cross the line. It's got a lot of win conditions involved, similar to like I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but similar to Quidditch. For some reason, that was the first thing that came to mind. Maybe I heard that from another podcast, but similar to that idea. But from what I've heard, it's one of the most amazing like multiplayer experiences out there, with a real old school arcadey feel to it. So I'm interested. Kingdom Hearts 3 is a thing. Valkyria Chronicles 4 is a thing. It will be releasing on everything. That's the other tactical game that I'm interested in. Octopath Traveler did come out, and I bought that day 1. No, I bought that day 2. It doesn't sound as cool. I bought that on day 2. Mostly because I was a little worried that, the physical copies were going to run out and I wouldn't be able to buy one for, a few months, because they had sold out in Japan. It sold stupid well, which is cool to see because I'm still playing it right now. It's a pretty hefty JRPG, but it might actually be one of my favorite JRPGs I've ever played. It's got a real like old school Final Fantasy VI kind of feel to it. It's by the same dev team that made Bravely Default on the 3DS. So if you have any interest in that, go check that out if you have a Switch. Something else that came out recently is Dragon Quest XI in terms of JRPGs and Squeenix stuff. I'm not playing it, but my wife just picked it up a few days ago and she's been playing it and she's absolutely adoring it. And from what I've seen of it, it looks pretty dang awesome. So if you're a Dragon Quest fan, go check that out. I believe that's on PS4 at the moment. Not sure if they're going to be releasing it out on the Switch, but yeah, whatever. Cool stuff. Was there anything else? Oh yeah, Fortnite's a thing on Switch too. That's kind of old news. Wargroove, Battletoads, Wasteland 2, Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls 6 has been announced. So expect that maybe around like 2025. With the Orange Box 2, with Half-Life 3. No, I'm kidding. Elder Scrolls 6 is definitely coming out, but, whatever. Let's move on. None of this stuff is shmup stuff, but if you're curious about what I thought about E3, it was good. There was some good stuff. Get hyped for Smash. That's the big one for the year for me, personally. Being a big Smash Brothers fan, I'm just like, oh boy. In terms of recent releases, the Darius Cosmic Collection for Nintendo Switch has been announced, and the regular version is going to include the arcade versions of Darius, Darius 2, Sagaia, and Darius Gaiden. The special edition includes the SNES version of Darius Twin, the SNES version of Darius Force, the Master System version of Sagaia, and the Genesis Mega Drive version of Darius 2, and the PC Engine version of Darius Alpha, which I've never played, but I've heard is excellent. So if you're a Darius fan, go check that. Not a Daria. If you're a Daria fan, go check out the books. It's a dumb joke. Pre-orders are available. I'm not sure if they've sold out. They might actually be sold out, but it will be releasing exclusively in Japan on February 28th of 2019. So if you don't have a Japanese account, go set that up now and pre-order it now. It's also available on PlayAsia for $50. So go check that out. That's not right. Suvari Delta did not release on August 30th. Maybe it got delayed. Man, my notes are old. But Suvari Delta, if you are interested, is an excellent game, shmup, classic. I forget exactly what system it came out first on. It might have been an arcade release first. I'm not 100% positive on that. I'm not super familiar with it, but I know of it. I've seen it. I played it somewhere. I don't remember where, but it's good. Go check that out. I believe it's on PS4 and Xbox One, so if you've got that, go check it out. Apparently, and moving on, apparently RxN Raijin is receiving the special treatment of getting physical copies, and pre-orders are now available exclusively on PlayAsia, starting from $40 to $50. It just really depends on how special a special edition you want. From what I've seen, the special edition is pretty cool. It comes with like books and like feelies and all that, so that's neat. I'm down with feelies. And I don't actually own RxN Raijin just yet. Only because it's kind of an expensive, higher end shmup. And I haven't heard, the most excellent things out of it. People aren't like head over heels over it. But I've heard some people absolutely rant and rave about it. But a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, it's alright. If I'm going to be dropping like $40 down on a shmup, I'm just going to get like, 2 excellent shmups for the same price, just, more bang for the buck. I'm a cheapskate. Get off my back. Moving on, the Flip Grip is now available for pre-order for the Switch. So, man, this is so full of Switch news. I apologize, but the Flip Grip is absolutely awesome. It had, if you're not familiar with what it was this Kickstarter that started for this hand grip for the Switch to play everything in tate mode. So, holy balls, I need to get that. I haven't ordered it yet, which is pretty dumb of me, seeing how I play in handheld a lot. But it's basically like this thing where you just slide in your Joy-Cons to the side and slide in the tablet in the middle so it actually plays in tate mode. And this doesn't just like necessarily help out like shmup games. This helps out like a lot of like arcade games as well. Just right off the top of my head, I can think of maybe like Donkey Kong or Punch-Out, because it uses 2 screens, which is absolutely neat. And I want to say it's only $12 online, so go check that out. I'll leave a link down below in the notes, so yeah, go check that out. Thinking about pre-orders and all of this kind of cool stuff, the Atari box is now available for pre-order. I'm just gonna say, look, if you're hyped about this, good for you, but my gut reaction is no. I am gonna stop myself from ranting and raving about Infogrames, because there are far worse companies out there. But the husk of a dead shell that is Atari, I don't trust them. If you want something that looks like that, just 3D print your own Steam box, or 3D print your own little PC in a box, or really Linux box. You know what I mean? No, don't fall for the lies. So Akata Blue is a game that was created by, is being developed and has been developed by Tanoshimasu for arcades specifically. And they're a very small team, so, someone had, I heard a rumor like a while back about them possibly doing a Switch version or maybe even a Steam version. But according to Shmup Em All, which is a website which you should go check out, mostly in French, so if you can translate it into English some way or the other, usually through Google, go check it out. But they had an interview with the CEO of Tanoshimasu, and From what they said, there is no foreseeable Steam release of Akata Blue, and the reason for this, according to them, is that they don't really necessarily see the point. Shmup games don't necessarily do well on Steam, according to their research. Things like Astro Breed and Sign Mora have, but most don't. According to them, even dorA.thI Resurrection sold about 30,000, which I checked on Steam Spy and it's actually 50,000. But look, whatever. I'm not gonna get nitpicky on them. But here's the thing: if anybody from Tanoshimasu is listening to me, I highly doubt they are. I honestly think it has something more to do with the price range. Now, the hardcore shmup player is going to be fine with dropping down $30 for like a high quality shmup, or even $40 for a high quality shmup. But let's look at the difference here. Sign Mora EX on Steam right now is $10, regular price. Asta Breed, the definitive edition, is $20 on Steam. Now, dorA.thI is $30. If you're the casual shmup player looking for an excellent shmup, all three of these are highly rated. What are you most likely going to buy if you don't want to be dropping down, a whole bunch of money? You can either get dorA.thI for $30 or Sign Mora EX and Asta Breed, the definitive edition, for $30. 2 for 1 of the same price. Of course Sign Mora EX and of course Asta Breed, the definitive edition, is going to sell more. That's a dumb thing. Now, I don't know how much the development cost was for Akata Blue, but I can't imagine it's, something stupid crazy, So, honestly, if they price it at $20, I can see it selling well. They just need to market it well. They just need to, do what they need to do on the marketing end. I'm not sure what resources they have in terms of marketing, but what they really need to do is just set the price at like 15 or 20. At that point, it's a very lucrative thing for a lot of players out there looking for a decent shmup. And yes, there's that hardcore base that's always going to buy, the new shmup that looks great or that they know is of quality. But really, what you want to sell to are the casual base, the casual shmup player, because that's what the bulk of the audience is in terms of shmups. They're the ones that are going to be buying it at 70% of the player base here. They're not going to want to drop 30 or $40. They're going to want to drop 15, 20 at the most. So, look, what you could do is set the price at 20 as like a bundle, and in that bundle you have the game and the soundtrack. I don't necessarily care about the soundtrack, but a lot of people do, so, I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure they can sell more than 30,000 at the right price. But, I don't know. I'm not a businessman, so whatever. I'm not even sure if they're actually going to be selling it on consoles at this point. So that would be unfortunate, because I know it's available on mobile, but over the past few months, I made it like this goal to myself of saying, hey, look, I want to look for good shmups on mobile. But even when I came across a good one, I just came to this point of annoyance where I was just like, I don't want to be playing on a touch screen. My big A thumb is taking up, a small chunk of the screen. That's uncomfortable when I play. I like seeing the entire screen, I like kind of glazing over my eyes with my peripherals and seeing everything that's going on. When my thumb is there, I can't do that. I can't do that comfortably. It's just, which is funny, and I had this realization, because honestly, I always thought of myself as not that picky of a player for pretty much everything, but I realized there are a lot of things I'm picky about when it comes to mobile. I'm a very picky player. It has to be as casual as all poo, or some sort of puzzle game that doesn't require fast action movements. Well, actually, that's not true. Tetris was pretty good, and there are a few others. Puzzles and Dragons is pretty good, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel right, and I don't want to be pulling out my Bluetooth controller to just be playing on my phone. If I'm going to do that, why do I have a Switch? The Switch is so much better. There is absolutely no lag. There's no input lag. That's what I mean. There's no input lag with that. So, I don't know. I've just kind of given up on the mobile sphere here. So if there is any good mobile shmups out there that you want to throw my way, please do leave a comment or, out on YouTube, at me on Twitter, whatever. Twitter is at Sensei _ Pong. Yeah, do that. But chances are I may or may not, pick it up, but I'll definitely talk about it if you give me a high recommendation, and let me know if you want me to give you a shout out if you do that. So, whatever. I've kind of given up on mobile shmups. So to wrap this up to something that's a little bit better, some positive news, and my mission statement with this podcast is that I cover everything shmup related, which is, Danmaku bullet hells, vertical, horizontal, even twin sticks, and maybe that run and gun every once in a while. Now, here's some run and gun news that you may be interested in. Easily the best run and gun of last year was Cuphead. Hands down, one of my favorite games of all time. Now, what has been announced is Cuphead DLC titled The Delicious Last Course for 2019. Now, I'm not sure exactly what all this entails. I'm assuming some extra levels. I do know that there's a new playable character, which is pretty cool, and that's about it. But I'm definitely going to try to pick that up when I can, so stay tuned for that. There is no definitive release date outside of just 2019, so who knows when that's going to come out. I'm going to assume maybe in spring, probably summer. We'll see. I'm not sure if Cuphead is going to really necessarily want to compete with the holiday crowd. I know they did last year and they did really well for what Cuphead is and for the size of the company, but to be honest, I'm not sure if they necessarily want to do that again. It really depends on how fast they can pump out this DLC and what kind of games are coming out next year during the holiday season, or fall to winter, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to predict that the new Cuphead DLC is going to be coming out sometime in spring and summer, but that's just a very loose prediction. Now, another thing that has been announced about Cuphead is that Cuphead 2 will be coming at some point down the line. This is technically old news from last year, but I talked to, a few people that I know personally that keep up with a lot of gaming news, but they never heard of it, heard this news. So, I'm just letting y'all know, if you haven't heard, that they are working on a Cuphead 2. They're working on it. There is no release date or release window even of estimated when they're going to get done. But, assuming that they might have a bigger team that they did with Cuphead 1, and I assume they would because of how well Cuphead did sell. Who knows? I'm going to, honestly predict 2021, but don't be surprised if it takes until 2024, because everything's hand drawn. It takes a long time. It has a very, very heavy and hard development cycle. It's a very development intensive game. At that point, I'm hoping it releases on everything and not just being an Xbox exclusive. So, everyone can enjoy that. And with that, hopefully they even make even more money, because Cuphead, if you didn't know, is only available on PC and Xbox One. So that's unfortunate, because, if it released out on PS4 or even Switch, it probably would have made 5 times as much as they did. But one way or the other, I'm pretty hyped, but, who knows when it's coming out. Moving on with the news, some other notable releases that you may or may not be interested in is back on Akata Blue Type R, the arcade version. Public response has been very positive, so that's good stuff. And if you're into, what was that called? EXA Arcadia stuff, which I didn't exactly know what that was until I listened to this other podcast called The Electric Underground that you should go check out if you're into shmups, because he actually talks almost entirely all about shmups and doesn't go on weird tangents like me. And he also interviews a lot of really interesting, neat people. But he interviewed the CEO of EXA Arcadia. Let's check this out. Yeah, EXA Arcadia. And apparently what it is, and I didn't know this, and it actually, now that I actually listened to that podcast, holy balls, that thing is awesome. The company is awesome. What they're developing basically with the EXA Arcadia platform is essentially kind of like a Neo Geo idea, like a Neo Geo arcade idea, where it's an arcade machine that you can switch in and out different games, or have multiple games on the same arcade cabinet. which if you're an arcade owner, which I'm not, but if you're an arcade owner, maybe I'll have to talk to the barcades in my area, but if you're an arcade, stop repeating myself, if you're an arcade owner, maybe look into EXA Arcadia stuff, because at that point, you're not just buying like used games or, some shady multicade, you're buying a new product that comes out with new games that may be really neat, depending on what your customer base is. So, absolutely neat stuff. Now, if you do own an arcade cabinet or are into arcade collecting, maybe look them up. EXA Arcadia. I'll leave a link down below in the description. And I believe Akada Blue should be getting a port to that, so check that out. Moving on to some other notable releases, the Sega Mega Drive Classics Collection did release in between like this episode and last episode on PS4 and Xbox One. Now, this collection is really cool, and I'm not gonna like discount it, but for you, the listener, just looking for shmups to play, it doesn't necessarily have the best list of shmups to play. It has more like everything else. It has, some good beat 'em ups on there. It's got some pretty good RPGs on there. I want to say Landstalkers on there, which is a really neat RPG, but you may or may not be interested in that. So what would you be interested in? It does come with a Biohazard Battle, which is a horizontal shmup, Gunstar Heroes, which is easily one of my favorite run and guns of all time, and I would say Gunstar Heroes kind of, edges out like Contra in a lot of ways. Maybe not Contra 4, but it edges out a lot of like high quality run and guns. I don't know if it edges out Metal Slug, but I don't know. I'd say the Metal Slug series on a whole is probably equal to Gunstar Heroes as a single game, but that's only because of just the amount of weapon variety and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty neat. It's a good run and gun on the Genesis Mega Drive. Another one that I noted was Galaxy Force, which I am familiar with the game. I haven't played it in a very long time. It's an okay 3D shmup, kind of like Space Harrier, if you're familiar with that. But it's okay, if I remember right. I don't remember. But they had another one called Super Thunderblade, which is another 3D Space Harrier-like game. If I remember right, it's kind of slow, and not as good as Space Harrier in a lot of ways. And this collection also does come with Space Harrier 2, which is pretty good, but I wouldn't say, for being a shmup, it's not necessarily the best kind of shmup you might want to play. With this, in terms of like those like 3D shmups of the mid-90s on the Sega Genesis, or early 90s on the Sega Genesis, I was honestly surprised that Afterburner is not on there, and with that, what the hell, Sega? Seriously. Why would you put Galaxy Force on the list and not Afterburner? Afterburner's, granted, I wouldn't say Afterburner is that great of a game, and hasn't really aged well, but for people that love Afterburner and, in terms of like iconic Sega games and Sega arcade games, Afterburner is far more, iconic. It's far more well known. And honestly, I find more fun with Afterburner than Galaxy Force. I'm just saying. Moving on to other notable releases, Ikaruga finally released out on Switch, and I did pick that up, and holy balls, I forgot how good that game was. I also forgot how hard that game was. Wow, I'm slowly realizing I kind of suck at shmups, but whatever. It is fun though. It's really good. If you're not familiar with Ikaruga, it's got this neat like polarity mechanic that can switch back and forth, and you can absorb different bullets depending on what your polarity is, either black or white. So if you have the white shield on with your white weapons out, you can suck in the white bullets. If you have the black, same idea. You can suck in the black bullets, and so on and so forth. It's really neat and adds some nice strategy to the game, and for being an older game, it still holds up really well. So if you have a Switch, or it is available on PS4 and Xbox One, I believe, go pick that up if you've never played it. It's not stupid expensive. Just get it. It is also available on Steam. Moving on, Cycle 28 did release out on Switch for $6.99. I was going to pick this up, but I ended up not, because something else came out, and I will mention that in just one second. But what Cycle 28 is kind of a multi-directional shooter, from what I've heard, similar to like Asteroids. I looked at it. It is a little bit like, it has that like Asteroids Bosconian feel to it. Everything that I've heard, it's got a good positive, reception. A lot of people are giving it 9s and 8s, so that's good to see. It's also more of a budget title, regular price being $6.99. So if you're into that kind of stuff, like the old school like multi-directional shooters, go pick that up. Tell me how it is. I'll probably end up picking it up at some point, but I just haven't. I apologize. I know I've said in the past that I absolutely love Bosconian, but something else came up on the Switch that no one talked about, and I was like, what the balls, guys? Come on. Really? Because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of gaming podcasts as well. I listen to a lot of different kinds of podcasts. But in terms of all the gaming podcasts I listen to, and there's got to be at least like 5 or 8 of them that I do, no one talked about it. And even if they did, it was just like a quick like, oh yeah, this came out. What am I talking about, by the way? This new game that came out on Switch, and I believe it's also available on PS4, but not Xbox One. Is it on Steam? Let's check. No, it's not on Steam. Okay, maybe it's because it's actually developed by Sony, and yes, I did say it's available on Switch. Azure Reflections, that's spelled A-Z-U-R-E Reflections, and what this is a fan-made Touhou game that you may be interested in. Now, the only thing I can actually really complain about the game is the regular standard retail price being $25. But when it did come out, I saw it on the eShop. I was going to get Cycle 28, but I saw it on the eShop, and it was on sale for like 30 or 40% off, something probably like 33% off. And I was like, holy balls, what is this? Because I saw the little title card there, and I recognized the characters as being like Reimu and Marissa from the Touhou games, and I was like, hold up, click, what is this? Oh, I pray it's not another like dungeon crawler or RPG game. And I clicked on it. I looked at the screenshots, and I was like, wait a second, this actually looks like a pretty solid shmup. So yeah, I picked that up, and I'll let you know how that is in the next segment. But if you don't want to listen that far into this podcast, let me just say, it's really dang good. It's actually a lot of fun. I wouldn't say it's as, difficult as a lot of Touhou games normally are, and it's actually pretty beginner friendly. But personally, there's a lot there and enough there for, a more hardcore player to enjoy. So, good stuff. But let's move on to another game that came out that has already been previously released on the Switch, but is now available on PS4, which I haven't picked up. I apologize. It's called Atlantis. It is now available, and what it is another multi-directional kind of like horizontal view shmup, where you pilot like a submarine underwater in a post-apocalyptic flooded Earth. Got a lot of sea monsters going on. From what I've heard, it's got a lot of positive reviews. The art style is really neat. It's all like kind of that hand-drawn look. Very artsy. But the one thing that kind of turned me off is just there's just way too much brown. Now, I'm not necessarily one to complain about graphics, but there's a lot of brown going on, and I'm just not, I don't know. There were other things that I want to pick up, and I was just like, am I going to get Atlantis, or am I going to get, I don't know. There's probably something else at the time, and every single time when I go on to the eShop where I'm like, alright, well, I got to balance. What am I going to get this time? Holy balls, there's a Touhou game. Just that kind of stuff. Now, in terms of non-shmup related stuff, real fast, only because I'm stupid dead hype for this. And maybe you're interested more in, like, what are you actually, like, crazy interested in that's not shmup related? Well, 2 games, one for the Switch and one for everything else, is Civilization 6 is finally coming to the Nintendo Switch on November 16th, and I don't know what the price is going to be because they haven't like announced exactly what the price is, but I'm assuming it's going to be $60 because that's what it is out on Steam. And I haven't played Civ 6 yet, which I'm a little bit ashamed of saying because, I'm just a huge Civilization nut and big, grand strategy game, not necessarily aficionado, but kind of, every once in a while, at one point in my life, I would have said, I may have been more in like that niche sphere of being like a hardcore like strategy gamer, but my computer couldn't handle it. So I looked at like what the specs were. I was like, oh, and I kind of heard a little bit, and I was like, oh, my computer can barely run Civ 5. I highly doubt it can play Civ 6, so I never picked it up. But now that it's coming to Switch, oh boy, I'm excited because this is an actual like full-out Civ game. It's not like Civ Revolution where it's like kind of like simplified for consoles, but knowing how well Civ Revolution controlled on the Xbox 360, I'm pretty optimistic on how well Civ 6 is going to control out on the Switch. So I'm excited. It sounds pretty neat. You'll get hyped for that. The other big one that I'm excited for is coming out on October 2nd, and that is Mega Man 11. And the retail price is going to be $30. And as of right now, there is a free demo available on PC, Steam, Xbox One, PS4, and Switch. And I've only played a little bit of it out on the Switch. But from what I can say, and knowing that the Switch is a lot weaker than the PS4 and the Xbox One and a lot of PCs out there, it controls awesome. So I'm assuming it just controls awesome on everything else. It feels like a true Mega Man game. This is the Mega Man game I've been waiting for way too long. Now, I'm not going to claim that I'm good at Mega Man. I'm not. I'm actually pretty bad, which is kind of weird to think about because I tend to do pretty well with platformers. But if you have any inkling towards like the Mega Man series, do note that the Legacy collections are available on, I believe, all platforms. Legacy Collection 1 has like the original Mega Mans 1 through 6 with like a whole bunch of extra modes, and then Legacy Collection 2 is 7 through 10, and then they also have the Mega Man X collections. Legacy Collection 1 has X games 1 through 4, and then 2 has 5 through 8, I believe. And I want to say the Mega Man X Legacy Collection also has like this special OVA of like this anime for the Mega Man X game. So that's pretty neat. I've never seen it, and I want to say it's available free on YouTube via like someone breaking the rules. But whatever, that's pretty neat. You can have that on your game and watch it. Pretty neat stuff. With that, we're going to take a small break before we jump into a returning segment for all you PC fans out there. So now we're moving away from the consoles. And yeah, I'm really out of practice. My voice is trying to get a little bit hoarse. I should drink some water or coffee or suck on a cough drop. Blah, 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 blah. Steam Watch! So, if you don't know what Steam Watch is and you're new to the podcast, basically I run through like all the new releases of Steam. I type in shoot 'em up, I type in shmup, and I type in twin stick shooter, and I find some neat stuff that actually looks interesting and might actually interest you. Chances are I haven't played it. As of recent, just to let you all know, I haven't really played anything on my computer. I honestly haven't been on my computer a whole lot, and it's actually kind of bothering me a little bit. But I haven't been able to play anything on my computer. Every time I sit down at my computer, I end up falling into this mode where I'm like, I should be working. I need to do some research for the podcast, or if I want to start up a new podcast, if I have a project going on YouTube, I want to do that, this and that. And the fact that I haven't really had time to sit down at the computer because of like just my personal life and work, it just suddenly became easier to just pick up my Switch, sit down at the couch, maybe lay down in bed, maybe take it to work, and just play my Switch. So, as of right now, 99% of all my gaming has just been on the Switch for the past 6 months, so I apologize if news gets very Switch heavy. So maybe I should just switch this name to the Boholo Switch Shmupcast? Something like that. I don't know, but Steam Watch, just for all you PC players, because that's, I personally think, maybe the best way to play a lot of shmups. Just to let you know anything new that's come out. So that was long-winded. I'm pretty sure you've just pretty much got the idea of what this segment is just from me saying Steam Watch. But first game that I want to mention and give a shout out to is this game called Room, spelled R-H-E-U-M. It is available on Steam for $2.99. Now, what piqued my interest initially about this game is that it reminded me a lot of this old NES game named Abodox, which is kind of like a H.R. Geiger-y body horror space shooter where like you control like this spaceman guy and it's a horizontal shmup and you're like shooting eyeballs and like body parts and like the kind of like almost like a Gradius cave thing of like, you know, a top and bottom. Instead, replace the cave, like the space cave or like asteroids with like intestines, and it's all like fun side note. Abodox was developed by Natsume, which is also the same developer that became famous for the Harvest Moon series, a very cutesy farming sim, life sim game, which is an excellent series if you like that kind of stuff, or if you're a fan of Stardew Valley. Excellent series. Don't buy any of the new stuff. I can go on a whole rant about Natsume and Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons and Rune Factory and Xseed, but I'm not going to. I'm stopping myself because we are talking about Room. Now, artistically, it's got like this kind of like almost 8-bitty, like 16-bit style to it. And it's a vertical shmup, but what really sets this apart and what made it really interesting is that instead of being, you know, your regular vertical shmup where like you're going up at the screen where where your ship tends to hang out near the bottom, you're actually going down. So you're actually shooting down, and it's reversed. That's how you're supposed to play. And thematically, it really kind of makes sense because it's the same idea. You're in a spaceship and you come across like this massive body horror in space, and you're going deeper and deeper and deeper, diving into the monster. So that's cool. I thought that was really neat. It's got like some features to it that the person was talking about was like different difficulty modes, unlockables, and endless mode, and different challenge modes and stackable power-ups. So it's got kind of like maybe like a Gradius thing going on. There's 3 different playable characters you can unlock, secret hidden boss fights, beat your high scores. Why did I type that down? Maybe I just like typed down everything that the guys put down. I'm hoping there's a high score system. But it looked really cool, and what makes this even cooler is outside of just having full keyboard and controller support, it's only $3. So who cares if it's on sale or not? $3 or not. It's also available on itch.io. So go check that out if it piques your interest in any way. Now, one thing I was kind of sad about because I haven't been able to be on my computer at all in the past few months is I missed a giveaway on Reddit because I totally would have loved a free copy because I'm a cheapskate. But, you know, at some point I will probably pick this up because the guy seems really nice. Seems really cool. And apparently he didn't know what Abodox was. I mean, the game. He wasn't familiar with that. So that was kind of funny because I think I mentioned it to him, and I read a few conversations of people mentioning it to him, saying it reminds them of Abodox, and he kept hearing that, and he's never heard of the game Abodox. So neat stuff, though. Kind of funny. Another game that I want to mention out on Steam is this game called Galencia, spelled Galencia. And now, at first look, this game doesn't necessarily look very impressive in any way. It just looks kind of like a Galaga Galaxian kind of clone with some cool, neat boss fights. Honestly, I would say a Phoenix clone, but most people don't know the game Phoenix. Phoenix is better than Galaga. Fight me on that. It came out around the same time. I want to say Phoenix might be like a year older, but who's counting? What really makes this game interesting, outside of just being $3 and being cheap as all balls, is It was originally developed for the Commodore 64 in 2017. So, if you're an old PC fan or like old personal computer fan and have a Commodore 64, you can actually pick up a new copy of Galencia for your Commodore. Mind blown. Now, that's really cool. And for the graphics, considering that it was actually developed on the Commodore 64, specifically for the Commodore 64, the graphics are amazing. For being a modern PC player, it looks retro as all balls. So, okay, whatever. Get over that. I just thought the idea was really neat. And I know this isn't really anything new because as of recently, for all you Sega Genesis and Mega Drive fans out there, a new game also came out on the Sega Genesis called Tanglewood, which also looks really cool. It's not a shmup, it's like a platformer game. I haven't picked it up myself, but it looks amazing and is pretty dang cool. And I like the fact that so many like small indie devs are like actually developing for these older platforms, and it's really neat. And actually really I can't complain about something being retro inspired and not really being truly retro, which I tend to do, and I get real like crass and jaded about like retro inspired games because I'm just like, oh, this isn't retro, this feels too new, or they implemented too many new things so it doesn't feel right, it just doesn't play right, it's not fun anymore. You know, it doesn't have that like difficulty curve or like the chunky, you know, mechanics of like a truly retro game. But if it's actually developed on a Sega Genesis or developed on the Commodore 64, you can't really complain. Thinking about like Sega Genesis games, if you are interested in the Sega Genesis, it's not a shmup, but do check out Monster Boy. Monster Boy The Dragon's Trap came out last year, and I have it on my Switch, and it is an amazing freaking game. Oh my gosh. If you like old school Metroidvania platformers or like just action platformers in general, pick that up. On a side note, Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom is releasing November 6th of 2018, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested in that kind of stuff. And if you're an old school Sega fan, good stuff. Tempest 4000 did release, and I know I made a big hullabaloo about Tempest 4000 coming out, but it never came out on Switch, so I never picked it up. It is available on Steam, though, for $20, and being a Tempest fan, I might actually have to pick this up at some point, but I just don't know because I don't really play on my computer anymore, so makes me sad. But from what I've heard, it's good. If you're into Tempest and like those tube shooters, kind of like what was that? Gyrus was the other one that I can think of off the top of my head. If you're into that kind of stuff, like the weird like forced 3D fixed shooter, Tempest 4000 looks amazing. It's also developed by the same guy that developed Tempest 2000 and 3000, so good stuff. Apparently he kind of made up terms with the dead husk of Atari that is now. Moving on, another game that came out recently is this game called Touhou Makoku Sigh. And from what people have said, it's apparently a fan remake of Touhou 6, aka Embodiment of Scarlet Devil, and it's only $8.99. From what I've seen, it looks pretty solid and looks pretty legit. And for only being $9 regular price, yeah, I can't really complain. That's not bad. It's pretty good stuff. There's seeming to be a lot more interest in Touhou games out on everything. So I'm being a Touhou fan myself. I'm happy about that. That's cool. Even if it's not like the legit Touhou stuff and just the fan-made, you know, spin-offy, like non-canonical stuff, I'm excited. It looks really cool. Pretty neat. Check that out if you like Touhou games. Something else that came up that I found was this game called Black Paradox. Why don't I have the price here? What the balls? Okay, Black Paradox is $11.99 out on Steam. And from what it looks like and from what I've read, it's a horizontal roguelite shmup with RPG elements. So with that into consideration, and knowing that it's gotten positive, you know, reviews and feedback and all that good jive, it sounds a lot like Steriden, which super piques my personal interest because Steriden is a phenomenal horizontal shmup, and definitely if you like roguelite stuff. So, go check that out. It actually looks pretty legit. I think more bullet helly than Steriden in some ways. I can't be 100% sure because I haven't played it, so. Another thing that is now available is the Deep Space Waifu Collection is officially a thing out on Steam. God save us all. I haven't played any of them. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, I know. Being the creepo that I am. No, I haven't played them. But from everything that I understand about it, they're solid bullet hell Danmaku style shmups. But you may not be interested in them because, let's say, Galgun was a shmup. There you go. Deep Space Waifu. Go check it out if that's what strokes your boat. Ew. And finally, for our Steam Watch, we've got another twin stick shooter because I like just throwing these in, just every once in a while. At least one. And this is my one twin stick. Yes, I'm holding back. This game called Black Sea Odyssey. I haven't picked it up. It looks very promising. So, trust me on this. If you like twin stick shooters, you may be interested in this. It is only $9.99, and it's got like this whole sci-fi monster space thing going on. With some RPG elements, of course, because everything's got to have RPG elements apparently these days. But I could be wrong, but the trailer looked like there might have been something kind of like Cthulhu, so I'm not sure. It looks like it's definitely worth checking out. So if you're into twin sticks, I would say that's the most notable twin stick that I've seen come out as of recent. With that, we're going to take actually another quick break before we jump into our next segment. Yo, Pong, what you been shmupping? So, we finally come to the point of the podcast where I talk about the games I've played recently, and mostly shmup related stuff because this is a shmup podcast, and I'll try to keep it as shmup related as possible. Oh, actually, let's write that down in the notes. Not to keep things shmup related, but because that should be a given. But there's something on here that I want to note, but we'll get to that in a second. All right. I put some exclamation points there so I know to get excited. Anyways, first game I want to talk about, and I haven't really played a whole lot of it. I've only maybe played a real hot few minutes of it. But this game called Hondo, which came out on Nintendo Switch, it is also available on PC, Steam, PS4, and Xbox One. And what piqued my curiosity was that it's coming from a developer from South Korea, I believe. And some people were saying it's kind of Touhou-like. So I was like, okay, if it's mechanically like that, I might actually have a hell of a time playing it. So I picked it up, and real quick first impressions, it's alright. I don't know. First thing that I noticed right off the bat was when I was playing in handheld mode, and I had to switch to docked mode because for some reason there seemed to be some sort of input lag with my left stick, my movement stick, and that is really bad, and that really soured my play time with it. And then I switched over to docked mode with my Pro Controller, and I didn't have an issue. So maybe it is my Joy-Con because that Joy-Con's been having a little bit of issue, but I don't think it is because I went back to other games and played with my played in handheld mode. I didn't have any issues. This includes all the Psycho stuff. This includes Azure Reflections. This includes Danmaku Unlimited 3, Explosion, Tesla vs. Lovecraft, anything you could think of. I wasn't having issues with my stick, but when I would play Hondo in handheld mode, I was having issues with my analog stick on the left side. So that sucks, because that means I'm going to have to force myself to play with the D-pad if I want to play in handheld mode. And honestly, I've actually gotten pretty decent at the analog stick. I know it's not the best way to play a shmup, but get off my back, get off my lawn. I'm the sensei, I'm always right. But I've gotten pretty decent with the Joy-Con, so I think it's actually just the game. Maybe there is input lag going on with that left stick. I'm going to have to like fiddle around with it a bit more and really kind of test the waters and compare to other games, but I have never had that sort of issue with my left Joy-Con, so I'm assuming it's the game. But in docked mode, it plays absolutely fine, so that's not an issue. Now, outside of that, just like control features completely souring my first impression of the game, it's got a real, like, kind of yokai horror, because it's inspired from Japanese, like, mythology, so if you're into that kind of theming, maybe you are interested in this game. And it's pretty cool. For me personally, it quickly became a game that I actually had to put on my blacklist for my kids because I was like, yeah, maybe this is a bit too freaky. Because the boss fights are incredibly well like implemented and designed, but I wouldn't say it's anything like super impressive. But it's a little bit graphic for kids. So if you want to keep your Switch as family friendly as possible, maybe don't pick this up. Maybe pick up Azure and Reflections instead, because it's all like the cutesy Touhou stuff. But for the most part, it's an okay game. I wouldn't say it's as good. Maybe it has something to do with like bullet size. Maybe it has something to do with like just color scheming. It is a beautiful game to look at, but I don't know. I might have to play it a little bit more to see what I actually truly think. But as of right now, I'm kind of like lukewarm on the game, so that was a little bit unfortunate because it was like Hondo or Cycle 26. I was like, oh well, looks good. I might have to pick it up, but it's okay. Another game I've been playing that I mentioned earlier in this podcast was Azure Reflections. Now, Azure Reflections is a fan-made Touhou game, so it's not like legitimately made by Team Shanghai Alice or whatever, but from what I have played, it is an absolute ball to play because it is the closest thing we can get for being a Touhou game out on Switch. So how does it control? It controls really well. It's very fluid, and you've got 3 different characters you can play. You can play as either Reimu, which is the main character, and Marissa, which is the witch girl with the blonde hair, and then you can also play as Cerno. So if you're like a big like Touhou project fan, you know who that is. But I don't necessarily care about the lore. I don't care about, storyline. I just play for the gameplay. It's really fun. And it's actually kind of at my, skill level. So, I can play well and feel good about myself, getting far or beating the game. So, whatever. Now, what is really actually interesting about this is that I would say it's actually very beginner friendly. The waves don't come in incredibly fast, and the last couple levels, the bats can be quite a bit of an issue for beginner players because like there's these like waves of bats that come in real fast and they're kind of dark against a dark background, so if you're not really paying attention to everything that's going on the screen, they could probably just blindside you. Did I mention that this is a horizontal shooter, not a vertical? So it's not like your classic, like a lot of Touhou games out there. It's a side scroller. So what this actually does though is it actually created a lot of neat like boss fights because you can either shoot right or to the left. So you actually end up having to move across the screen everywhere. There was like, I forget what the character's name is, but she's the head maid character of the Scarlet Mansion, and there's this point where she's like jumping from corner to corner and goes into the middle of the screen and jumps from corner to corner, this way and that, and actually makes for some really fun gameplay because it's like, at that point, definitely for someone that's like me, that's not necessarily good at aiming all the time, you have to actually more concentrate on aiming because it's like, oh, well, they're not just like hanging out near like, one side of the screen. You can't just like willy-nilly shoot. You got to actually pay closer attention to where you are on the screen, which adds some nice like strategy and maneuvers and really fun gameplay. The boss fights are the real key, feature to this game, because honestly the levels are a little bit short, and the big complaint that I've seen on the internet is that people are saying that the game is a little bit too short. I don't think it is. I would say, man, maybe it is a little bit short, but what really makes up for this is the accessory system and the fact that it's just so like beginner friendly. Now, back on the mechanics with this, one interesting thing is that it's not unlockable right off the bat like classic play, but the mode that you start off with is actually this mode where you kind of have an HP meter, which is directly connected to your spell card meter thing, where it's like you have this meter that builds up, and then once it builds up, you can activate your shield, which can absorb bullets, and you do like a melee attack, which is really neat. And you have to use the melee attack on the bosses to get to the next phase of whatever their boss fight is like. But let's say you have a full meter and you haven't activated your shield, and oops, you got hit by a bullet. You get stunned for a little bit, and your magic meter goes down about halfway. If you get hit again, like consecutively within like a second, you get knocked out pretty fast. But because of like this little leeway, my oldest son can actually get pretty decently far in the game, and I thought that was really neat. And you know, he likes shmups and everything, but he's not like really dead set on playing them a lot, but I think he likes it because of that. Because for a beginner player coming into a bullet hell, it can be very like overwhelming. There's too many bullets or too many enemies, or the waves just seem too crazy to try to weave yourself through, you know what I mean? Now, if you played a lot of shmups, it's not that big of a deal, but for a new player, it can be very overwhelming. So having that stun feature is really neat. Now, if you can 1cc the game, or at least I think beat the game in whatever the regular mode is, you can unlock, I forget what they called it, but it's basically a classic mode where then at that point it's a one-hit kill. So it's more like a classic Danmaku. So, you know, that's cool. So at that point, for, you know, the more hardcore players, just play the game and then you unlock classic mode. I'm sure you can handle it. And if you can do that, if you 1cc the game, you get the true ending. I haven't 1cc'd it yet on normal mode. Shame on me. There's just this one freaking point that always gets me. And you should probably go into practice mode, which, if you're curious, practice mode is like a boss rush. Lets you practice on the bosses and all that, which is nice. Overall, I'm actually having a lot of fun with this game. I think it's mostly because just it feels like a Touhou game, like a horizontal Touhou game, and with that, I'm really enjoying it. Now, if you're into like accessories and, you know, whatever, that also makes it maybe just a little bit easier, because at that point you can like kind of fine-tune your characters just a little bit. I forget exactly what it was. Like, if you give them glasses, it makes their like item reach a little bit bigger, and then if you give them like white cat ears, it makes their focused movement maybe a little bit slower. If you give them like one of the cat tails or whatever. If you wear the fox mask, it gives you an extra life to start off with, which is neat. Now, if you don't like the look of the accessories, you don't have to do that. You can like turn those off, but still have the perks available. So, you know, there's a whole perk system here, and I thought that was really neat. You don't see that a whole lot, but that's really cool. The more you play, the more green spell cards you can use as like as a currency to buy this kind of stuff. So it's really neat. There is also a lunatic mode, which has to be unlocked after beating hard mode. So if you want to keep on playing and play in a harder mode, that's available as well. I haven't played lunatic mode yet because I'm still trying to like perfect my normal mode. And I oddly enough, I'm not necessarily the kind of player that goes like super hardcore into a shmup, but at this point I'm kind of wanting to get like kind of hardcore on this one, only because I kind of want to unlock that mode. I want to have that mode available to me. I want to have the classic modes available. That way I can get my butt handed to me anytime I want. So I think that says quite a bit. So if I were to actually give it a review, like a review score, I might have to rank this up pretty high. Maybe like a 9 almost, because I'm enjoying it quite a bit, and I can see myself still enjoying this 5 months down the line. So I might have to give it a 9, maybe an 8.5, but as of right now, as it stands, As Your Reflections is looking to be like a 9 out of 10. If you're curious about from what it looks like with Hondo, maybe a 7 on the more optimistic side. But don't be surprised if I give it a 6.5. But I'm looking at a 7 right now for Hondo. I need to play it more. But if you're interested in those, go pick them up. They're excellent. Definitely As Your Reflections. But like I did say before, the regular price is $25. It seems a little bit high for what it is, but, you know, definitely if you're the casual, you know, shmup player, maybe wait for a sale. Moving on to other things I've played, I finally did pick up Danmaku Unlimited 3, and it is about as good as people have been saying it is. It is pretty beginner friendly. I'd actually say As Our Reflections might be more beginner friendly because of the HP system that they have going on. But for the most part, Danmaku Unlimited 3 plays really well. It's pretty fun. I wouldn't necessarily say it's incredibly creative in terms of just most of the levels and the boss fights, but the boss fights are pretty substandard or standard, you know, Danmaku style fights that you'd come across. But for the most part, it's still a lot of fun. I like the graze mechanic. Now, some people don't like the graze mechanic, but a lot of people do. As Our Reflections, like a lot of Touhou games, have a graze mechanic, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Danmaku Unlimited 3 does have a graze mechanic. Now, what a graze mechanic is, the closer you can get yourself to the ship, to the bullets, and all the bullet fire, you actually build up meters and points and all that kind of good jazz, and then you can go into turbo mode and do more damage per second for a short period of time. So, honestly, I haven't played Danmaku Unlimited 3 as of super recently because there's been a couple other games that have been kind of eating up my time. But for the most part, Danmaku Unlimited 3, if I remember right, when I was gonna record this a month ago, I was gonna give it something like a 9, believe it or not. Yeah, I'm super. I give 9s away like it's candy, but Danmaku Unlimited 3, I can see why a lot of people say it's their favorite shmup on the Switch at the moment. And I want to say Danmaku Unlimited 3 is also available on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. So if you don't have a Switch, go check it out there. Maybe you'll be interested. I want to say the regular price on everything is $10. So that's good stuff. It's not super expensive, but for what it is, it's pretty high quality. Another game that I want to mention out real fast is this game called Inksplosion, and it's an arcade-style twin-stick shooter. And it's super cheap. I want to say it's like $4, but you know what? Honestly, I hate to be hard on twin-stick shooters, being the twin-stick nut that I am, but it just doesn't have enough substance to it. It always feels like the same thing, and doesn't have that tension that a lot of twin stick shooters, excellent twin stick shooters, have. What do I mean like that? Like an arena shooter like Smash TV or Robotron or Crimson Land, where you're dealing with mobs of enemies all at one time. I don't even care if you have different power-ups or different weapons you can pick up. It's just with Inksplosion, it's always just an arena or a randomized arena with maybe a couple walls and 4 enemies of different types that do different type of shots. Once after playing for an hour, it's you just feel like you're going through the movements of doing the same thing over and over again. And for that, Inksplosion gets a 6.5 for me, because it is a solid game. And a lot of people out there, I've heard, love it, but honestly, I hate to be that one guy that's super picky. Yeah, it's good, but it feels like you're just looking at a seizure machine because of all the freaking colors. And that's really where the difficulty comes from. Being able to figure out where you're shooting and where your guy is, because there's just too many colors on the screen. It's just ooh, look at these flashy lights, look at all the different colors, and really, honestly, take that away, I might actually just be preferring to play Berserk. Yeah, that's a deep dig, but you know what? It's a mediocre twin stick. I'm sorry, but it is a super budget game, so it's got that going for it. Moving on to another shmup that I've been playing is Tesla vs. Lovecraft, and that's another twin stick. Now, I haven't played this super recently, but I got super deep into it for a while, and I had a lot of fun with it. And I want to pick it up. I want to pick it up again pretty soon, because I was getting pretty decent at it. I was breezing through the harder levels and the end game of it. And there's a lot of content there in Tesla vs. Lovecraft. I want to say it's $15 regular price, but holy balls, I love 10 tons for making twin stick shooters of such a high quality and such a high caliber. There isn't that much in terms of enemy variation for a 10 tons game. For what there is, It is absolutely solid. It's like take Crimson Land, take off the chaff, and just focus it in with tight controls, tight gameplay, and just an awesome, fun atmosphere to play in. The enemies are pretty clear to see, it's not anything that's too crazy, but I can see some people getting overwhelmed because it is a twin stick, crazy shooter. But it is a lot of fun, and I give Tesla vs. Lovecraft a 9.5 out of 10. Currently the highest rated one that I've played as of recent. Moving on, another game that I've picked up as of recent, which is arguably a twin-stick shooter, is Enter the Gungeon, which is a roguelite, dungeon crawler type game. Yeah, we're slowly moving away from, shmups at this point, so I apologize, but this is the stuff I've been playing, so just so you know. Now, Death Road to Canada is as good as everyone said it is, and I absolutely love it. I haven't been able to play a whole bunch of it, but it's good stuff. It's got some good variation to it. There's a lot of fun little guns that you can pick up, and the RNG isn't that bad. I can see it being one of those games that you just kind of have to get good at, and then the more you play, the better you get. So whatevs. If you like roguelites, go check that out. Some other games I've played was picked up since the last episode was Death Road to Canada. That's a fun one. That's kind of a top-down action game, roguelite-y. A lot of survival-y stuff because you're in a zombie apocalypse. If you enjoy things like that, go check it out. It's absolutely hilarious, and it's really fun. You also have your own character creation thing, and a lot of unlockables, and it's a roguelite, so, it's not as, punishing as like a lot of roguelikes, but if you want something that is still hard and requires a lot of like inventory management, go check out Death Road to Canada. Moving on, another game that I picked up was the Faerun Collection, because I heard a lot of good things out on the 3DS, and I was like, whatever, we'll just pick it up for Switch. Now, there isn't really much to say about the Faerun Collection. A lot of people were saying, oh, it's just like Zelda, and it's kind of like a 2D Zelda, but honestly, I picked it up for the Shmupcast because once you beat everything, you unlock this extra little game called, I forget what it was called, but it's basically the Faerun version of a shmup, because like the game plays like kind of like a simplified Zelda game, and then it turns into like the final boss fight is like a shmup, which is like a weird like 180 on in terms of like what the gameplay actually is. So that's really jarring personally. It's just like if I'm playing a Zelda-like game, I'm playing a Zelda-like game, not a shmup. If I'm playing a shmup, I'm not going into dungeons solving puzzles. That's not what I want. It's not what I'm aiming for. And honestly, the boss fights, it's negligible. It's not worth, I wouldn't say it's necessarily. It's only worth your time if you enjoy old school 2D Zelda stuff, but only pick it up if it's on sale. That's what I'm going to say. But it still gets a Faerun rating of 7 out of 10 because it's not bad. It's pretty good, but I'm not sure if I'd drop down the regular price. Pick it up when it's on sale, personally. That's what I'm going to recommend, if it piques your interest. Now, something I did find out on the 3DS, which was actually kind of interesting, and this is a shmup, and it's incredibly Touhou, inspired. It's called G.G Series Wonderland, and overall, it's not a bad game. It's, for what it is, I was quite surprised to see something like this out on the 3DS. But it's incredibly easy, and then there's a horrible difficulty spike once you hit the Queen of Hearts, because it's just like, what it is you're playing Alice from Alice in Wonderland, and you're just flying through Wonderland, fighting like Wonderland enemies. And it's kind of funny. I thought the whole idea was pretty funny. I was like, that's brilliant. But it just spikes at the Queen of Hearts, because it's like everything is really easy to deal with, except for that Queen of Hearts battle, because she has like this whole shielding thing going on, and you have to hit her dead on to get her. So I was just like, this is balanced really bad. It's like easy. Oh, and there's the spike. Overall, it's a mediocre shmup, but it's like $1.99 regular price. So if you have a 3DS and you're looking for something that's almost a bullet hell, maybe pick it up. Honestly, just pick up Gradius, because that's on the Virtual Console. But it is $1.99, so You know, whatever. If you've got like a couple bucks in your eShop wallet, maybe pick it up. It gets like a 6 out of 10 for me. Oh, I had this noted because I was playing it at the time. The original Touhou games for the PC 98, but I haven't been able to necessarily play a whole bunch on the computer, so they're fun. Which is probably why I latched onto Azure Reflections, because I was like thirsting for like old school Touhou games, and I was like, oh, I don't have time to play on my computer. And I found it on the Switch, and I was like, shabam, there we go. Something else I've been playing, moving away from all the shmups, just real fast, we're gonna like ripsaw go through this as quickly as possible. Fire Emblem Conquest on the 3DS, I finally picked it up. Get off my back. It's excellent. It's kind of hard. There's been a couple missions in there that have kind of stumped me a little bit, but if you have a 3DS and you love SRPGs, the Fire Emblem Conquest, Fire Emblem Awakening, and Fire Emblem blah blah blah, blah is all really good. Conquest is the harder of the three, so whatever, you know. If you're not into that kind of stuff as hardcore, maybe pick up like, what is that? It's not Awakening. Birthright. That's what it was. Birthright. Yeah, pick up Birthright. Another game that I picked up, which is available on Switch, PS4, Vita, Xbox One, and Steam PC, is Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which is the 8-bit prequel to the actual Bloodstained game that's coming out on all consoles. Now, Bloodstained is made by the same guy that worked on Symphony of the Night, but he left Konami because Konami sucks, and he kickstarted his own like Symphony of the Night inspired game, and the Kickstarter did so well that they had all these stretch goals, and now they're trying to make up for those stretch goals. And one of the stretch goals was an 8-bit kind of demake of Symphony of the Night or Castlevania or whatever you want to say, called Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, and it's only $10. But if you're curious on what it is, it plays a lot like the old school Castlevania games. So this, I wouldn't necessarily say like Castlevania 1, I'd say more like Castlevania 2 and 3, but I played it, and it's absolutely awesome. If you like the old school Castlevania stuff, go pick that up. It's only $10. It's available on everything. Now onto the two games that have eaten up most of my time, but really one of them's eaten up almost all of my time, is Octopath Traveler out on the Switch. And like I said, it is one of the best JRPGs I've played in a long time. Just the battle mechanics is just, it doesn't get dry really. It's a very easy pick up and play as well. So like it's one of those things that you can just kind of put the Switch in sleep mode, pick it up for like 15 minutes and play, and then put it back in sleep mode, maybe play it for like 10 minutes, 30 minutes. It's actually been the game that's eaten up almost all my time when I take my Switch to work on like breaks, you know, like on my 15 or my 30-minute lunch. You know, it's it's surprisingly easy to pick up and play for a JRPG. And JRPGs aren't necessarily the easiest things to just like pick up and play casually, but Octopath Traveler is an easy game to play casually, even though I'm 30 hours in and I don't even think I'm halfway through the game. It's on the level of Disgaea, where it's like, oh yeah, let's just do a quick mission. Yeah, let's play that, you know? Actually, I think it might be easier to pick up and play than Disgaea, so just letting y'all know, if you have a Switch and you have any inkling for JRPGs, Octopath Traveler should be number one on your list. If you don't want to play that, if you're not into like that kind of aesthetic, the aesthetic is finally like clinged onto me. Like I originally said that the aesthetic felt cheap to me and I didn't really like it, but I actually like it now, and it's weird. I don't know what changed for me necessarily, but I actually really like it now. If you don't want to play Octopath Traveler and you want kind of a more modern RPG, the JRPGs I would recommend would be obviously Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which I'm still yet to need to like finish because I did start playing it, but a whole bunch of other stuff came up like Mario Odyssey and a whole bunch of stuff. And then Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana, which I haven't actually bought yet, but it's on my wish list of JRPGs to buy, but JRPGs always take so long to play that I haven't picked it up. I was just like, well, I don't have the time to play it right now, and there's a million things coming out this year, so whatever, you know, it's on the back burner. Another one that came up that is on my list of I would highly recommend because I know the series is Shining Resonance Refrain. It's part of the Shining series of games. If you're familiar with like Shining Force from the Sega Genesis, good stuff, but it's not an SRPG. It's more of a classic JRPG. So if you're looking for that, go pick that up. Was there another JRPG? I think those are the big ones I can think of off the top of my head. But moving on, finally another game that I've been playing quite a bit of. I want to get back onto it, but Octopath has been basically eating up all my time. And then as of right now, when I'm not in the mood for Octopath, it's, either back to Strikers 1945 or Azure Reflections or maybe Danmaku Unlimited 3. It's this one it's technically a roguelite, but it's more of a roguelike than a lot of roguelites. But this game called A Magical High School Girl. Now hear me out. Hear me out. This game is actually really good. If you like truly old school roguelikes, something similar to like a mystery dungeon game, or Shiren the Wanderer on DS, or I don't know, the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games. I can't think of anything off the top of my head outside of that. Maybe Etrian Odyssey, even though Etrian Odyssey isn't truly a roguelike game because it's not randomized. But if you're into like those old school dungeon crawling roguelikes, what was that? Fatal Labyrinth on the Genesis. That's another good one. A Magical High School Girl is actually really good. Don't let the real like cutesy anime like aesthetic fool you. There's actually some solid stuff going on in this game. Now, I want to say I saw this like earlier in the year, and then I dismissed it for some reason, and then like I saw it again. I was like, oh wait, hold on. Why was I curious about this game? So I finally clicked on it, and then it said a roguelike, and I was like, hold up, let's look into this because I love roguelikes. It's one of my favorite genres, and there aren't really that many roguelikes out on the Switch. Like classic roguelikes. And I love classic roguelikes. The only other one I can say would be like Quest of Dungeons, but that's pretty casual for being a roguelike. I did finally pick up, what was that? Curse of the Necrodancer. That's really good. But if you want like a actual turn-based roguelike, there aren't really that many choices to go around. Now, what really puts Magical High School Girl above the rest, because honestly, I wouldn't say it's like top of the line classic roguelike, but what really makes this game stand out is its spell system. Now, there aren't any classes. You're the same character no matter what, and you can progress through the games, and that's what makes it a roguelite, not a like, if that makes any sense. I hate to be pedantic about that, but, whatever. I know some fans are, so that's why I like to clarify. Now, what makes the spell system so fun is that, so the way you do spells and the way you learn spells in this game is, so like a lot of those like shoujo animes, you're like a magical high school girl, right? Okay, whatever. Let's get over that for a second. Ha ha ha, that's funny. Now, the way you learn spells is you find these crystals of different colors, and each color is a different kind of like elemental attack. Okay, so when you learn that, when you use it the first time, it doesn't use your magic or your MP, which is directly connected to your HP, so if your MP drops down all the way, you die. If you get hit too many times, your MP goes down and you die. So in terms of like managing your health and your hunger meter and your MP, which is also your HP, that adds a lot of fun like strategy and like management you have to keep in mind with, which makes it really fun and more challenging to someone that's more familiar with roguelikes. But with those crystals, here's the thing. Now, if you find any like regular color crystal, it's going to do just a randomized magical attack. But if you come across a gray unnamed crystal, you can name it anything you want. And based off of whatever name you give it, that's the kind of magic spell it is. So some fun thing that I did was I typed in, because I saw this on a Steam review, because I was like, when I was doing a little bit of research on this game, I typed in Kamehameha. And then you do a Kamehameha fire-based attack, and it's super OP, and it's this giant beam that just shoots out. Holy balls, this game is amazing. So I just started doing whatever I wanted. I was like, poison trap. You just put down poison trap. I did magical punch, and it does like this close range like melee punch attack thing, and or like blah blah fan or blah blah sweep, magic missile, name it whatever you want. The way the spell system works is whatever you type in is what you get. So that's pretty cool. Now if you do pick this up and you need like a low level attack that doesn't take up that much HP, type in just a gun. That is a pretty simple, basic, low level fire attack. With that, it was really neat. I like that. It was a really inventive, ingenious spell mechanic that I absolutely adore and fell in love with. And that's why Magical High School Girl easily gets an 8.9 out of 10. See, I'm not just giving away 9s willy-nilly. This is 8.9 out of 10. But that's only because I actually really enjoyed it. Now, if you're not into like old school roguelikes, it might be a little bit monotonous, but if it is your jam, maybe consider picking that up when it's on sale, because $15 is a bit much for being kind of your standard roguelike. But whatever, if it is your jam, definitely consider it, if you can get past the themes. One interesting thing that I did notice was, because I did start playing Pinball FX3 a bunch for a short period of time, was I did hear some news that Pinball FX picked up the Williams license, and I may have to buy all the Pinball FX tables. Because if you're not a pinball junkie, you may not know, but stay tuned for that if you like any kind of pinball or classic pinball, because that means they're going to come out with Medieval Madness and maybe even the Twilight Zone. So I'm excited. When Williams was around, they had some of the best pinball games out there, so I'm excited. Hopefully that comes out sooner than later, but I wouldn't be surprised if it takes some time to develop that stuff, because they just picked up the license. So maybe these Williams tables won't be coming out until like next year, but I'm getting hype. Next year is going to be a good year for pinball. Just letting y'all know. Oh yeah, that's right. I was going to do this segment called Indie Shmups in the Temple of Boom, but I am not, because I have GG Series Wonderland in here, the weird little cute 'em up on the 3DS, which is okay, and then I have Slime Time on Itch.io, which is kind of a neat like arcadey game. Break Hell, which was a kind of a neat like Breakout meets Bullet Hell out on Itch.io, and then Kitten Squad, which I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I'm rating 5 out of 10. It's free on pretty much everything, and the only reason why this was kind of interesting was it's a game by PETA. It's a twin stick shooter, but for being a twin stick shooter, it's it's really bad, because the hitboxes are just like, just imagine like Paper Mario pieces on an almost 3D arena, but it's always just a square, like a rectangle that fills up the screen. The hitboxes are terrible. I haven't played this in a long time. I only played it for a little bit because of morbid curiosity, and it's free. But yeah, it's a flat sprites in a 3D isometric playscape, which is terrible. The sprites are too big, the hitboxes are weird, and for being a twin stick, it controls fine, but the weapon system is really uninspired, and being a PETA game, it's very preachy and not necessarily the most kid-friendly thing in the world, so I didn't even bother downloading it, but my wife downloaded it on her PS4 because she was like, oh, this is free. It's got cute kittens on it, and then she was like, never mind, this game sucks. So yeah, my final score is, the game works, but it looks and feels like an okay Flash game. So for that, 5 out of 10, just go buy something. Don't even bother with Kitten Squad. It's very mediocre. If you want a twin stick shooter, if it's available on Xbox, pick up Geometry Wars. If you've got a Switch, pick up Tesla vs. Lovecraft. That's actually fun. If you got a PS4, I'm sure there's a million twin stick shooters out there. Like Automine, maybe. That's a new one that came out. Geometry Wars might be available on PS4. I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure the 10-ton stuff on there is available as well. So just go buy something. That's a final verdict there. So yeah, that was Indie Shmups and Temple of Boom. Boom, 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 boom. And finally, let's wrap this podcast up, because I am I feel like it's dragging on a little bit, so real fast, the book club. Video game book club. So I'm going to cancel this. I don't know. Unless it was like an actual just general gaming podcast, maybe the book club makes more sense. But let's talk about the games I did have on the list real fast, just so you know. The original Don Pachi, design-wise, you can tell that it's an early cave game, but it still plays really well, and it's worth a look if you're into old-school shooters. It's kind of fast. It definitely feels like it was designed for the arcades, but it's pretty good. I enjoyed it for the little bit of time that I played, because this was like a couple months ago when I played it, and played it for like several hours. I was like, all right, yeah, I get a feel of what this is. This is cool. It's all right. And then it's Mr. Pants on 3D. On Game Boy Advance. Fun fact: originally it was supposed to be like a Donkey Kong game, but Rare lost the license and all sorts of like complicated stuff. So really, what it is, it's kind of a neat little like tile-based puzzle game. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's not like falling tiles or anything. You've got like a looping snake that goes around and comes towards the center of the screen, making your playfield smaller and smaller. And you have to make like squares and rectangles out of the different shapes and stuff. It's a lot harder than it sounds, but for the most part, it's worth a look if you like kind of weird, off-the-wall puzzle games. So, like arcadey puzzle games that require, fast thinking and fast reflex and being able to like work out where you need to put different pieces as quickly as possible. But it's really neat. Something I did list here that I didn't actually get a chance to play was this game called Rampage Puzzle Attack, because the movie Rampage recently came out like in the past few months and out on DVD, and I watched it, I was like, I wonder what other Rampage spin-offs there were, and I looked it up, and apparently there was a puzzle game for the Game Boy Advance, so now I'm on the lookout for that. So it doesn't look bad, I don't know, but I thought that was interesting. But yeah, with that, I think that wraps up the show. Hopefully I pointed you in the direction of some fun, awesome games and some great shmups that recently came out, and hopefully the next podcast can come out sooner than later, and if I come out with anything of any interest, hopefully that comes out sooner than later. I still want to make this podcast, as frequent as possible. So, in the meantime, in between now and the next episode or the next news-focused episode, I may actually just have like certain episodes that may start focusing in on more specific topics, whether that be like some sort of topic just about shmups or some sort of topic about like a specific game or series of games that have come out recently or are more on the classic sphere of like retro stuff or whatever. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what plays out. And yeah. If you would like to know where you can find me, you can find me out on Twitter at Sensei_Pong, or you can find me out on YouTube at Sensei Pong. I haven't posted anything recently because I've just been way too freaking busy, and I want to concentrate on the podcast. But, yeah. Links are below in the description, and I've mentioned them throughout this podcast a little bit, but for another great Shmupcast, if you want to go listen to that, is the Electric Underground by Mark MSX. I'll leave a link down below in the description below. So, well, at least the RSS feed and all that kind of good jive. So, go check that out, and stay tuned, and keep on shmupping, y'all. Sensei Pong out. Like and subscribe.